So everyone's here. Just getting started on Babylon 5, Season 1, Episode 2, Soul Hunter. Now, we just did a watch party, and I just wanted to get some initial reactions to the episode, just like overall impressions.
I didn't get the head start like I did for the pilot movie and episode 1. Everything happened and ended in the same episode. I don't know how, unless I missed it, how the soul snatcher got beat up in the way that he did.
He got beat up in a very 90s procedural television way.
What does that mean?
They just did it quickly enough. There wasn't that much of a struggle. It was just Sinclair is going to overpower this guy, and that's how we ended.
The end.
Right, the end.
Yeah, I thought the whole thing was anticlimactic while being dramatic at the same time. Very interesting. I felt confused, but not, I felt emotionally confused, put it that way.
The religious war, like, my belief is the truth. No, my belief is the truth. I was just like, oh, here we go.
I found it really interesting. Not only the my truth is the right truth, but I kind of got this, maybe it's just my author mind going, but writing the whole like prehistory of them, because their genetics and their understanding of the soul is similar, even though their beliefs about it is different. Like scientifically, they know that this can happen, we can do this. The whole transferring of souls or keeping souls is a choice for them. And then throwing in that whole gray part and like they're tricking you. I kind of get like a Romulan Vulcan type relationship between them, whereas the soul collectors were probably an offshoot of them, trying to keep the gray from having as much power as they do by collecting the souls that are going to be reincarnated into the gray once again.
This isn't my favorite episode, even though I like the actor who portrayed the soul hunter. Babylon 5 had some terrific guest actors, but the metaphysical debates about the nature of the soul and the existence of a soul and what happens to the soul if we have one, if it dies with us or not, that kind of gives a blueprint for the type of conversations that Babylon 5 conducts throughout its run. So I think it's very interesting in that aspect.
Yeah, J. Michael Straczynski loves to have that conversation in his media. It doesn't matter what the show is, what it's about. He's going to challenge people's perspectives on spirituality and religion. And then he doesn't really take a position. He offers kind of like maybe everything is true type of not even answer, just approach. Because the Minbari, they have a particular perspective on souls. The soul hunters have a different perspective. But as we get into this episode, you'll see a few of the other characters also offer perspectives. So the episode opens up. Ivanova, Sinclair, they're both meeting their new arrival. We finally get to welcome to Babylon 5 the replacement doctor, Dr. Stephen Franklin. All right, so this scene is written very well because you get to meet this new doctor. So if you watch the pilot, you're like, well, what happened to Dr. Kyle? Well, they met in like a couple of sentences. Oh, well, I met with Dr. Kyle in the transfer at IO. So Dr. Kyle's being transferred out. Dr. Franklin's being transferred in. When you all met Dr. Franklin, what were your impressions?
It's tough to remember that far back, but Richard Biggs had a charisma, and I was just curious because we don't know at this point in time that much about him. So for me personally, I really didn't formulate an opinion yet about him, but I was curious as to learn more about this new character.
I felt like he was more fluent, like less, I don't know. He felt like he fit into like the whole 90s stereotype of the gang. Automatically came in like, oh, it's like my old friend I just hired.
Yeah, he kind of settled right in, which I think going from episode 1 to episode 2, you started to see, the the new cast members who are coming in to replace folks from the pilot. There is a stark difference in the way that they present themselves. the way that they act physically with their faces and then with their voice. There's no one here that's robotic. There is very much a lot of fluidity. Richard Biggs, I believe he was also a soap opera actor, and so he's had plenty of reps as far as like being able to portray these type of characters. And I just thought it was a really interesting choice. But after seeing the series so often, it's like, man, this was a great introduction to this character.
I would agree. And let me just, if I can interject something too. When this premiered, it was in the 90s, and it was a breath of fresh air to see a Black character who is a major part of the cast introduced, just like in the pilot. And he does have a pivotal role to play throughout the rest of the series. And that's something that you really did not see a lot of back then at that time.
Right.
You still don't now, but especially back then.
Yeah, at the time that they started, we didn't have a Cisco yet, I don't believe. Or I have, maybe I'm mixing up my timelines, but I don't think we quite had a Cisco yet. But Black characters were more of supporting characters or background characters.
Yeah, if that.
So what happens is very quickly, Sinclair is called away because there's an unidentified ship approaching from hyperspace, and it's out of control as it exits hyperspace, and it's, floating towards the station. Sinclair quickly grabs a starfighter, and I thought this scene was kind of interesting, but because they really wanted to show off how Sinclair is this great pilot, just like episode 1. So he's this great pilot. He goes and he gets a couple of tries, and he finally hooks the ship, and then they go ahead and dock it. Now, when they're in the docking bay, they immediately call for the medical team. There is a survivor on the ship, and he needs medical attention. They also say that the ship is banged up. Like, they don't know if he was running from something or what. Is he being attacked by raiders? Is there something else going on out there? They don't know. This is one of those little hints as far like foreshadowing as far as like what's going on in this episode. So down in Med Bay, Garibaldi, our friend Garibaldi, he's being annoying to Dr. Franklin immediately. Did you all notice that he just
I did. It kind of plants the seed in the type of relationship they're going to have too.
Yeah. So he's immediately annoying Dr. Franklin, and Franklin again shows off quick, his expertise in xenobiology. This is kind of like a nice little technobabble moment. We get a few of those throughout this series. Sinclair, he's talking to Garibaldi about the possibility of entering this alien ship. They're just establishing like, the atmosphere in there is different. We don't know if we can even go in there. We can't blow our way in. We might destroy the whole station. So not very far away, Delenn is there. As soon as she looks at the survivor, she freaks out. And she grabs Garibaldi's PPG, aims a gun at him, and she's about to shoot this guy. And she calls him shock thought. I don't know what the word is, but she translates like, yeah, that's a soul hunter. Later on, she apologizes. She's like, you know what? I'm sorry for my behavior. And I just want to take a moment and talk about her behavior at this point, because how many diplomats do you know quickly disarms a guard and brandishes a weapon? Throughout this episode, starts to show some interesting characteristics.
I think her behavior is shifty. Even before she lashed out, I like the fear of seeing the alien. Like when she presents herself, like is I've seen so many stuff and things. Like let me help you. Even though they've had conflict before, it's not like there's some peaceful people. And so I wasn't really shocked when she transitioned. It's more like what is something that's like pretending to be gentle and then, snapping on its prey or something. Like she's just lying in wait to get close enough to do some damage. Not that she's really on this peace thing that the title of the show says that they are. And I mean, I could be
Mm-hmm.
wrong, but we'll see. And before we get too far off of it, I just wanted to mention how cool I thought it was when he had to go out and try to stop the aircraft from crashing into Babylon. The way that the ship unfolded, even the way that the weapons unfold and become exposed and available, I just thought that that was pretty cool.
Oh yeah, the whole launch sequence. Yeah, they did a really good job, even with the limited technology at the time. They did a good job at portraying that. And again, it gets better throughout the series. So Lynn is explaining. She's like, "This is what a soul hunter is. They can sense death. They steal your soul at the moment of death, and they collect the souls. And they collect the souls that they consider of immense value." And this is where we start to like get some hint into the Minbari perspective of the soul and spirituality. Throughout the episode, Lynn is expressing like, souls are valuable and we can't let them be captured. They have to be set free.
I don't know how they know that. My thoughts were like, okay, here we go having a conversation about soul. What is a soul? And then I was like, wait, aliens have souls? And I was like, we'll just roll with it. Uh, and then seeing the souls, like the guy called the souls his children, and then how they surrounded him. I'm like, what's happening here? Are they gonna like zap him or I don't know. And it was, do they have to be set free? Was the guy wrong? They, I don't know. I'm done. I'm rambling.
No. You're good because you're asking the questions the episode is setting up for you to ask.
So I'm being manipulated by Babylon 5. All right.
Yeah. So really quickly, we have this really cool sequence where we're going back and forth between down below and the med lab. This again is an opportunity for us to examine the class divisions in Babylon 5. So on this mass state of the art, what did they say, 5 mile space station, they have poor people, like not just poor people, but like street people who are running scams on people while they're in down below. And there's a guy, he's a scammer. He's what's the name of the game? It's like 3 cups, but I think I've heard it called 3 shells or whatever. And they're showing him scamming some folks and winning money. They click back to Med Lab and the Soul Hunter is up. He is standing up and he's talking. Dr. Franklin notices and he requests a translation team, but the Soul Hunter's like, "No, I've been to your world before." Now, at this point, this is where I'm starting to think like, oh, okay, so this episode is more of like it's kind of like a horror movie. It comes across more of the horror genre than almost anything else. Did you feel this? Did you feel similar to that, Rod?
I did. As a matter of fact, I was thinking the Soul Hunter is essentially the Minbari version of the Boogeyman. And it's interesting because we have all these metaphysical debates going on, but as Straczynski does this in a lot of his writing, but this being can sense death. And it's interesting that no one really goes, how is he doing that? They just kind of go, oh, he actually can sense death. And they kind of accept it, but that's would be considered a supernatural ability.
Yes. And yeah, everyone just accepts it. Now, the humans, they tend to be a little bit more skeptical, but they do notice how all of the aliens on the space station have just locked themselves down or they left. They left the ship. And the only people who don't seem to be very concerned are the humans, because the humans, it appears that most humans on Babylon 5 secularists in some way. Later in the series, they do approach several spiritual practices from Earth, but right now we're looking at. I would say that most of the cast are agnostic, but we're at the point where we're flashing back and forth. The scammer scammed the wrong person and he just takes the money and run. We're flashing back and forth to the scammer running and the soul hunter interacting with Franklin, and he's saying some pretty, I would say, some weird stuff. The actor for the soul hunter, I think he did a great job. First of all, he has a very striking look, very wide jaw, thick face.
Yes.
A very deep voice. He's very
Godlike.
or devilish, but yeah, he has a very commanding presence.
Yeah, I agree with that description. Commanding is a good adjective.
Yeah. And so at the end of the chase, the scammer is stabbed, and back at Med Lab, the soul hunter, he kind of deflates. He's like, "Oh, the moment has passed," and then he just goes. He goes and he's back down. Now, no, I'm sorry. I skipped a part. Basically, they take the scammer back to Med Lab. They're operating on him, and the soul hunter is, he's still talking at that point. Franklin's like, "Man, turn this off." But the scammer dies, and then Franklin is asking him like, "How did you know? How did you know what was going to happen?" And he kind of gives a little bit of an explanation about they know about the moment. The moment is past. And I guess that. Go ahead. Sorry. No, go
I was
ahead,
just
Nita.
gonna say the scamming part with the game. I don't know why. I thought this was like back on Earth and something from the past. It took me far too long. It took me until the guy was in medbay to realize, oh, that was happening on Babylon 5. Okay, the end.
Yeah. Now, yeah, I get what you're saying, and it is challenging because of the production value, but I think that also points out like the differences between people's living conditions on Babylon 5. The people down below, they live in squalor. It looks like they're in it reminds me of the parts of the future in Terminator where they show people the human resistance. They're hanging out in abandoned buildings and everything is ratty and dirty, and that's what it looks like in down below. We will be looking more into what goes on in down below, why it exists, but at the moment we're just, as the audience, we're just accepting like, okay, yeah, there's poor people in space. I did want to touch on this. So Franklin, his interactions with the soul hunter, he kind of dismisses the whole thing about collecting souls. He's like, with sufficient enough technology, you could probably make, a copy of someone's brain patterns and clone their brain. But he says, I don't think you can capture a soul. He's like, this whole thing is ridiculous, And of course, Sinclair wants to get some straight answers. We walk into another very 90s scene of the soul hunter chanting while the other characters are talking. And then Sinclair accuses the soul hunter of being a thief, and that's what snaps him out of it. He's very offended to be called a thief, and to be called a thief. And so he says to Sinclair's like, "No, I'm not a thief. I'm not, we don't steal souls, we preserve them." And this is when we learn that the soul hunter has an adversarial relationship with the Minbari. He's dismissive of the Minbari being present on the station. Or some of their antagonisms do come through in that part. And as you all pointed out, yes, this is where you start to see like the parallel or the contrast between the Minbari's beliefs and the soul hunter's beliefs. But we also have thrown in there the human's belief. And this is something that's interesting. So we're watching a sci-fi space opera that does mix in a lot of spirituality, and we're asking these questions: do we have souls? What happens when people die? Is there an afterlife? Are any of the Earth religions true? What do the alien religions look like? We're going to be continually exploring those throughout the series. But I think this is an opportunity to get just kind of talk to Mel, because she's dealing with similar questions in her story. So how do you feel about the way that the episode is approaching these questions?
It's very looking at it from a science perspective, because a lot of people want to, especially agnostics or atheists, scientifically, I can't prove that there's a God. Scientifically, I can't prove there's a soul. But to some extent, you have to believe that there's something that you don't know yet, especially in an environment like Babylon 5, where you know that you're dealing with people who know a lot more than you. You're looking at the Lombari, who you already understand are more technically advanced than you. So, is
Yeah.
there a possibility that these people know more? And are you going to let them teach you, or are you just going to cut off at humans don't know this, so it must not be true? Because we've done that before and we've learned more before. We didn't know where electricity or fire came from before, but we learned it. It may have been mystical to humans a long time ago. So maybe in 1,000 years, the human soul may not be a mystery to us anymore. We still haven't even patterned the whole human brain yet.
That's a good point.
And I like the way that you mentioned too, Damian, earlier that Straczynski just kind of puts all of these questions out there and kind of says, well, you make up your own mind. He really is very good at not favoring one position over the other. Because, like Mel said, we don't understand a lot, but maybe given time, we will. But then again, that doesn't negate somebody's spiritual beliefs. So I always appreciate that personally in his storytelling, that he kind of leaves it up in the air. Like Franklin is a skeptic, he is a man of science. And so if he can't quantify it in some way, then he's very skeptical of whatever it is. But some people are like, well, you can't prove the existence of God. You can't, there's no tangible way. I don't know if it was Babylon 5, I don't believe it was, but there was one episode of the show I was watching, and the person said they were having a debate with a skeptic and atheist, and they said, well, there's a lot we don't understand, but think about love. We pretty much can agree that love exists. Okay, but tell me, what does love smell like? What color is it? How much does it weigh? But it does exist. That's an interesting response.
Yeah.
And I saw a video earlier this week or yesterday. It was talking about Straczynski. I'm not sure if I'm saying his name right, the creator. And his background coming from Poland and Russia during World War II, and coming to America and wanting to adapt, and his parents not. I think being a growing up with that being your background, you would question why people go against other people's religions, because you just got out of World War II pretty much. Hurt people because they believe something else. Like it's probably something that weighed on him, and it shows in the way that he portrays the question of religion or what you choose to believe.
Yeah, and again, we get to ask these questions in several interesting situations throughout the series. I thought what was interesting was during the quote unquote burial of the scammer, they mentioned a couple of things. They say that his family could not afford to have the body transferred home, so they just shot it out into space. Now it was in a casket.
And did you notice that Ivanova said some words of benediction over the body?
Yes.
The space littering just is beyond. No matter how many episodes or shows that I watch, that they just willy nilly throw stuff out into space like that's cool. And then you see other movies like an Armageddon where something then collected a bunch of ice and it's on a collision course for Earth and is gonna like end all of humanity. Like, are we really a good idea? Are we gonna keep doing that?
But you know what? In that scene when they shot the body off into space, did you notice that they mentioned why they did that? The scammer's family could not afford to transfer the body from the station back to Earth. And that's Straczynski letting us know capitalism is alive and well in the 21st century. And like Damian pointed out with Down Below, there are poor people in this universe. This also separates it from Star Trek, where it's a utopia and they have kind of evolved past the need for currency. No, you have to have money in the universe of Babylon 5. And if you don't, then that does affect the quality of your life.
I thought
S-
the trajectory of the pod was toward that a star.
It does kind of make you feel like he's gonna go towards the star. He's heading towards the light.
Yeah.
So like it's not exactly littering because it's going to be disintegrated. It's just sent to the what do you call the fire where you burn trash?
The incinerator.
Yeah. Oh, I already said that word. Well, there you
Or Sunday, you don't have to feel so bad about the littering because the gravity of a close enough and powerful enough celestial body will bring it towards it. And if it has an atmosphere, he would burn up in the atmosphere. So problem solved.
Oh my gosh. Well, the other thing that I wanted to touch on when we were talking about being able to quantify a social construct or not, I don't know that that's really the same as proof of a thing. It gets so murky because me knowing something and not having a language or, you know, even because language is a social construct, because we haven't agreed between one another that this thing exists, doesn't negate it from existing. And it is silly, to be fighting over belief systems because you don't know, and maybe just somebody hasn't spoke it to you in a way where it makes sense to you. And so, like, where is the benefit in fighting and the loss of life and all of that?
You're making a good point, and I think Krasinski is making a similar point because you have the two opposing viewpoints of the Soul Hunters and the Minbari. They both believe that they are correct, but they exclude each other's perspectives. And I think this is where most of our conflict comes from. We have people who believe that they are the sole holders of truth, and then everything that contradicts or opposes it has to be punished or severely attacked. And then also, even if we do agree, some people take the quote unquote truth to an extremist level, and they will exercise their belief in violent ways and then justify themselves later, right? Religious persecution has always happened in human history, and it's usually by people who have different religious beliefs, and they believe that they are justified because their beliefs are the truth. And for everyone else, you're either going to admit that our version of this is true and convert, or we have to punish you because it's for your own good. At least that's the way the West does it. I know, there are several expressions of this throughout our history, but right now we're being pretty violent here in the West when it comes to religious persecution and expression.
And I noticed
No, it's been throughout human history.
Yeah.
I noticed something interesting about the Lombari, what's her name, Delenn, understanding how to open up the souls, like them giving it to her. So on a scientific level, they both understand souls kind of the same way. Like she gets how they're in there and how they can be released. So they're basically fighting over the idea, not what they understand of it, like you guys said. And that for some reason reminded me of, like, no matter what evidence you give someone, if they're set on believing what they believe, whether it's like a trauma response or just their training or whatever, they're going to believe that. And it just made me think about flat earthers.
Okay. Well, we're going to start attracting some interesting people to this now. Yeah. So we get a little bit of some perspective from Ivanova. So while she does her benediction, Franklin, he goes on and he's like, it's not fair. The average human life is about 100 years. You have to think about this in the 23rd century. The average human life is about 100 years, and we're just figure it out once it's all over. And Ivanova's like, it doesn't matter. Even if we had 200 years, we would make the same mistakes. And I'm like, wow.
Classic Ivanova.
She just dumped all over that whole scene. It was great though. And then her Dr. Franklin's like, oh, I see that you're a pessimist. She goes, I'm Russian.
I think Ivanova is a proxy for Straczynski. I really do.
Yeah.
I think if you want his viewpoint, if you look at her character, I may be wrong, but I think that you're getting his from her.
Yeah.
And especially since Russian.
Yeah. You know, they give Ivanova those moments in the first episode, but throughout the season, she starts to grow as a character. Like I said, that weird cadence that she affects, it kind of goes away, but a lot of her, I guess you would say her Russianness will come out a little bit, but, you know, to be continued. We learned a little bit more about the Minbari beliefs also. Oh, yeah, that's right. So the Soul Hunter gives us a little bit of a look into the what started the Earth Minbari War. And I thought this was really interesting. Now, y'all have to understand, these are little breadcrumbs that Straczynski is sprinkling throughout the whole series. And he mentions that the death of one of the Minbari leaders, Dukat, died. The death of one of the Minbari leaders, Dukat, caused the Earth Minbari War. Yes, Delenn was there. And Delenn stopped the Soul Hunters from collecting his soul. So there seems to be a lot that, you know, transpired at the beginning of this war, what caused the war. We learned a little bit more about the Minbari belief as far as like they want to protect the souls. They don't want the Minbari souls to be in the hands of the Soul Hunters, because they believe that the Minbari souls have to be reborn, and whenever the Soul Hunters collect the souls, they are preventing them from being reborn into the next generation. And in their back and forth, the Soul Hunter, he's like, oh, this is mere fairy tales and fiction. You know, he's dismissive of the Minbari's beliefs, and he basically is saying like, look, when a person dies, the soul is lost, and when they're lost, they're gone. He's basically saying there's no afterlife, there's no rebirth. We have to preserve these souls, and we have to learn from them. And that's when he said he recognizes Delenn at the death of Dukat.
I heard that, but I wasn't sure if he was telling the truth or not, because he says that like to take a jab at her, but then he also stated that taking the souls would prevent, you know, like the conflict that happened, like maybe them not allowing the souls to just pass on over is giving them some kind of power or control, that things aren't imbalanced. But I mean, I could be wrong. I don't know.
No, you picked up on something important, and I'm sorry. It's a spoiler, so I'm gonna leave it alone.
Don't spoil it.
You picked up on something. I'm not going to. But in that conversation, this is Delenn is outed as a member of the Grey Council, and the Soul Hunter is demanding like, okay, I know you. You're a Setai. You were there when Dukat died. What is a member of the Grey Council doing playing diplomat on this space station? And she just takes off. She's like, oh shit. All right. And then she's just gone. And I thought this scene was shot a little weird, because as she's walking away, she walks past a guard. The Soul Hunter's laying on the ground, and you hear a loud crash. And you see that he collapsed. The guard, he turns around, he runs, he unlocks the door, puts on a mask, he goes check on the guy. He's like, hey, are you okay? And he gets basically one punched into unconsciousness.
Look, the guards on Babylon 5, look, because now that scene when the Soul Hunter is talking to the little praying mantis looking alien, trying to find a back way, and I don't know if you all noticed, but the guard has his back to the door as he exits. I'm like, dude, don't you think you might need to be facing the door that you're trying to go? I just kind of caught that. It was kind of funny too.
Yeah. These guards, man, they were made out of paper in this episode. He grabs the PBG and he just takes off. This dude, he's walking around the station free, and basically he's scouring the alien sector, finds the insectoid, and which is, All right. So how did he know exactly who to go to
First, the
to
guards
the station?
know that people are exiting the spaceship like 50 going north. They not stupid. Like, they might be atheists or whatever we were calling them, but they like, something's going on. So I want to keep my soul intact, but I do have shift tonight. I'm not risking just,
So you saying they
me.
didn't see nothing?
I'm not
Yeah.
paid
They didn't
enough.
see nothing.
Hear no
nothing.
evil, see no evil, speak no evil. Say none of my business.
Right.
I was
Go
people
ahead.
from going in, and that's why his back was to it.
Yeah, because all of the aliens were scared of him. And so just like Delenn decided that she was going to pull a PPG off of a guard, which, I guess you wouldn't expect a Minbari to disarm a human like that, right? Right out in public. But Garibaldi did have the drop on, like, she had the drop on Garibaldi.
Yeah, that's another thing, because we talked earlier about how she was right there when the ship came in. Like, I heard it came in. Like, she should have recognized that ship, unless he just had another ship from somewhere else because he was rogue. But if she's that familiar with and especially, she's not going to say it because of her past, and she's obviously being sneaky there. But
Yep.
yeah, something makes me feel like she saw that ship come in and said, "I gotta be there."
I'm glad you pointed that out, because I'm like, why is she here?
No.
Why is she here? I mean, yes, she's a diplomat, but does she need to know about every single ship that comes in, especially if there's a distressed ship? I don't know. Maybe that just shows that she's a good diplomat, that she's a good ambassador, but at the same time, she really had her nose in it.
But she's not a diplomat. She's some kind of spy. She a creep.
Yes. Well, you'll see. So back at the command center, they get an alert that, hey, there's another ship coming through the gate. It's an unscheduled arrival from hyperspace once again, and this ship contains, lo and behold, a second soul hunter. And the soul hunter is like, hey, I need to speak to you immediately. One of my brothers is on this station. Someone is going to die. And they're, they do the dramatic cut to cut to commercial. And it's like, oh, I thought somebody was going to die, but now there's two of them. This must mean somebody really important is going to die. Now, if you were just watching the show, not knowing what's going on, you're thinking like maybe one of the main characters is going to die, right? So, and I like how the breadcrumbs were dropped to make you feel like that's going to happen. It's really cool. So the second soul hunter, he says that the first soul hunter is pretty much going to kill somebody so he can preserve their soul. And then we cut to, lo and behold, the first soul hunter is in Delenn's quarters. He's right there saying like, hey, I have to save you at any cost. And it turns out that the reason that the first soul hunter's ship was damaged in the first place is because he is he went rogue from his order, and they were trying to stop him. So they fired on him and disabled his ship, hoping that they would stop him. But he still made it to Babylon 5. And his goal is to kill Delenn and quote unquote preserve her soul. Sinclair and staff, they get a notice that say that again.
Her soul needs to be preserved.
Well, like I said, we'll see more of Delenn later in the series. So Sinclair and staff, they get a notice that one of the guards was stunned in the green sector, which is the ambassadorial wing. So then they realize like, oh, he must be after Delenn. Let's go. So the hunt is on there. They're trying to get to Delenn. Basically, the soul hunter has Delenn restrained on a bed. He has a machine, but he also is draining her blood, and he's talking very creepy about the blood leaving her body and her heart slowing and her dying.
He went cray.
Yeah, so it went from being a horror film to being kind of like a serial killer thriller type thing, which makes you think like, okay, this guy, he knows what he's doing, which means he's done it before. He's a serial killer. That's why he's so creepy.
He's a serial soul preserver. Get it?
Serial soul snatcher. And the soul hunter tells Delenn that the members of the Grey Council, their souls are very valuable because the Grey Council is part of the ruling body on Minbar. Now nobody else is really supposed to know this, or not that nobody else is supposed to know this. Nobody's supposed to know that Delenn is part of the Great Council. And he has these little glowing orbs that he puts in the machine. And as the machine is going, you can see part of Delenn is going into the machine. And I get the impression that not only is he preserving her soul, but he can also read her soul and read her mind, because something he sees in her, he goes, wow, who would propose a thing? How dare you propose a thing?
Mm-hmm.
And so now we got more questions about Delenn. It's like, what in the world is she up to? Like, granted, she's the one that's in trouble right now, but there's something, like you all said, there's something that's off about her. So, but we see that the soul collecting process is slow. So while that's happening, Sinclair enters the room and a shootout ensues. There's a fist fight. This is, I want to kind of get you all's impression, because the fight scenes in Star Trek, I would say, and I would say the TNG era of Star Trek, the fight scenes in Star Trek are some of the worst parts of Star Trek. Double axe handles, bad karate. I'm sorry. What do y'all think of the fight scenes in Babylon 5? Are these passable, or do these basically look like theater fights?
Theater fights.
Definitely choreographed.
I remember, let me not go on that. Yeah, fights in a way that it's for the camera. Like, I have to punch this way because the camera's going here and it needs to catch it. Not, I'm hitting you.
Right.
And the camera just happens to be there.
Yeah. And so, we get what turns the action scene around. So the soul orbs are floating around the soul hunter. And Sinclair, he rushes to the machine and turns it on the soul hunter. This is another 90s trope. It's like, we're going to turn the machine on the bad guy. And so his soul is being ripped from his body. I'm sorry. His soul is being ripped from his body
as he dramatically falls to the floor.
But dramatically, I would say in a good way, that worked. It was still like, it was still theatrical, but yeah. And he unhooks Delenn. So he saved Delenn's life, and the soul hunter, the first soul hunter, he's gone. He's dead. His soul is in an orb. Now we cut to the scene where. Hold on. I wanted to ask a question about the machine. Now, earlier, Mel said, like, yeah, everyone takes for granted that there's a soul. But I think we also take for granted that they have a machine to take your soul out of your body, whether you want to or not.
Okay, I'm going to raise this question. Maybe I missed some.
Okay.
This is kind of nitpicky, but I was watching this and thinking, when did he have time to build all of this? Or did this take place in his ship and I missed it? Yeah. If it took place in his ship, it makes sense. But if it didn't, I'm thinking, dude, how did you build all that now?
Felt like that's why he was talking to the insect and getting a guide and stuff. So while
he wanted all the secret passageways in and out.
Dragged all that stuff on, and then they also mentioned that they had found another compartment that they didn't see before that was empty. They're like, he must have came back and got what was in there. So when he got that stuff, he had already found a little hiding hole to go put all that stuff where he was going to plan to kill Delenn.
Okay, yep, that makes sense, because I was thinking, where did he find the time to put all this stuff together? That makes sense.
Yeah, as far as the time, go ahead, Nita.
Oh, I just said he's a hardworking man.
Yeah, as far as the time, who knows? But, that's the TV passage of time, because
you're right, they didn't get
5 seconds of screen time could be 3 hours.
That's true.
But Dr. Franklin is speaking with Sinclair, and they're talking about how, Delenn lost a lot of blood, but the Minbari are very resilient. Maybe that's why they did so well during the war, because they just kept going and kept going. That made me think, like, because you saw in that jar, like most of her blood was outside of her body.
I'm sorry, that blood looked like ice tea, y'all. I was like,
I thought it looked like Kool-Aid.
yeah, I know y'all had a limited budget, so okay.
Oh, the Minbari always that their stuff is crystal, so like maybe their blood is also crystal and all that stuff. I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah, aliens supposed to color blood because
Say that again.
aliens supposed to have different color blood because apparently they don't oxidize. They don't bring or maybe it oxidizes differently. Now that I think about it,
Yeah.
like shouldn't their blood be like similar to ours or a certain hue if they're carbon based and bring oxygen?
Yeah,
So yeah,
that's a good
we're
point.
very flimsy.
That
on
is a good point.
At this point, I'm like, I ain't even crack open a middle school history book.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's one of those things that we'll just take it,
And we're going to see a
It's-
lot of that, to be fair, because again, this was the 90s, and then this was the first season of the show, and they were really getting their bearings. So you all are going to
Yeah.
see a lot of stuff production-wise that'll make you go, eh.
Well, I mean, like
Right.
that was just like even just choosing the color. Like it could have been red, cool.
Yeah, now I do admit that they could have done a little better on that, because I kept thinking, that's her blood. That looks like iced tea.
Well, like in the 40s, the science fiction that was being written that wasn't pulp fiction was solely and more based on science. The story was driven by science. So it's not like because it was the 90s that they didn't have people who knew how to write a story around science. They've been doing it for a long time. First science fiction book that came out was in the 1400s. Their science is just as sound as the one that came out in the 1400s. So you might as well throw in some glass people too.
So, Sinclair tells the Soul Hunter, like, get out of here. The second one, he was like, hey, people don't like you here, so
We don't want your kind
you know,
here.
we don't like your kind around these parts. And he's like, yep, we're not welcome very many places. It's our stock. And he's like, so we're gone. And before he leaves, he goes, hey, by the way, let me ask you this question. What happened to his collection? Saying, the first Soul Hunters collection. And Sinclair, he's being very quiet. He goes, it's safe. And then he's like, okay, fair enough. And he leaves, which I don't know if I would feel the same but at the same time, if he's like murdering people, it's like, yeah, whatever they want to do with it is fine. And lo and behold, there's Delenn in her quarters with all the spheres, all the souls, and she is releasing them. Now, knowing the discussions and the conversations that were had during this episode, how do y'all feel about Delenn releasing souls into the universe?
Some of them souls were evil and they should have been preserved, and I don't know.
According to her, like their numbers are dwindling because the souls aren't coming back. Like they're not being reincarnated.
But here's the thing, though. How does she know if the souls were Minbari or not?
And then also, she doesn't feel like the souls should be captured. They need to be free and go to where they're supposed to go. Like obviously, it wasn't natural for them to take the souls because they had to create a device to do it. And when they first said that he was a soul collector, I thought like he was gonna stand over somebody and suck up the soul like it was a biological thing. No,
Mhm.
you had to
And-
get the machine off your ship to do it.
Definitely was
It made it
surprised by the machine.
Huh.
Oh, I said I definitely was surprised by the machine. Back in the beginning when the scammer died, I thought in that moment the soul snatcher got the scammer's soul, but then I'm like, oh, that's not what happened. So yeah,
Because it was established earlier in the episode, because that's a good point, Nita, but they do say that they only take souls that they deem worthy.
Yep. Important souls.
Yeah.
Right.
That probably helped 2 points to show the importance of the soul because he was from the horror section. And then also at the same time showing that there's a poor section of Babylon 5 where people just don't have.
And that the soul hunters, too, they are, you might as well say they're classist. Because he talks about the
Yep.
type of souls that they deem worthy. Oh, artists and political leaders and blah, blah, blah.
thinkers.
But now this human that is down below, he's not worthy because he's poor. That's essentially what that's conveying.
Yeah.
And I find that
Mhm.
interesting.
Yeah, and I also that's where I get where, like, if they had to create a device in order to collect the souls, and you got these sneaky people over here that are the souls that are the most important, if they've been doing this for 1,000 years, how much did they twist what the reason for collecting the souls was? Like, how long they've been doing this, that so many different species know about it, except for the humans, obviously.
Also, am I remembering this detail right? Aren't the soul hunters also immortal?
They allude to that, but I don't know if that was confirmed in the episode or not.
Yeah,
The lady said that in the beginning when she was about to kill Homeboy or some when she
That's true.
that's confusing too because she said immortal, but then she said kill it. But you can't kill an immortal things. And then later she said release it. And then people are I don't know.
It would have
But
been
I
more
get
clear if she had said they're long lived, meaning they
Yeah.
have long lifespans, but they can't be killed. But you're right, Nita. She did say, "Oh, they're immortal," and I'm like, "But he was injured, though."
Yeah. And I think what they mean immortal here, and you see this a lot of this term being flexible in sci-fi and fantasy. Long lived in that as long as no one stabs them to death, they wouldn't die. You know, they would just live throughout time. But for these type of characters or this type of immortal with a sufficient enough damage, they can die. So that's one way to look at it. But I think it also helps us understand like the mythology that the Minbari created around the soul hunters,
Right.
as well. The last little bit was Sinclair. Finally, he gets back to his quarters and he looks up a translation of what Satai means, and he finds out that the Satai is a member of the Grey Council, which is the ruling body, and he's like, so he called Delenn Satai Delenn. That's interesting, and it alludes to this question: what does a member of the ruling body of Minbari, what business does she have on Babylon 5? And so more secrets are being revealed about Delenn, which again, so cool how they start to drop those breadcrumbs and get you prepared to not just simply trust these characters and take them at face value, but you want to learn more, like, what are her secrets? What is she hiding?
Right.
Who are you really?
Great way to build intrigue because these are,
Yeah.
it's not a spoiler to say, these are significant plot points that they've revealed in the second episode of this show.
Yes.
And I think that's remarkable.
she's there to that's what she
Yeah.
said. In another episode, she's there to observe.
But you can't trust what these people say all the time.
Oh, so she's not there to observe.
I didn't say that now.
But you did not say it either. So
Did not say it though.
Y'all, we know she
right.
obviously that's what she wants people to know. That's the seed
Mhm.
she's planting.
Also, I wanted to point out a couple of things. So this was the Delenn heavy episode, but notice who was not present.
The other two that fight,
The one with the
Right.
hair.
No,
Jakar and,
Right.
and Londo, yeah.
Yep. Because first off, they would have just overpowered the episode.
Yeah.
Right.
That would have been too much.
Yeah. However, I would be interested in what the Centauri think of the Soul Hunters, because they probably have a cynical perspective of them as well.
you know what?
I don't know, though.
So-
They are kind of superstitious.
Yeah, they're superstitious and they're narcissistic. So they probably said, Soul Hunter, I'm gone because they coming for me.
That's a good
That's
point.
why we didn't see them because they was part of the ships that left.
There's like, oh, time to go.
Yep.
Yeah.
Bye.
that part.
Yeah. So that was episode 2. Soul Hunter. Any last thoughts before we get out of here?
So
Love-
so is this acting, is that like the style of the time, or is that just how Babylon 5 is?
I'm sorry, what was the question, Nita?
The acting, like, you must do it now. Is that like the
Let me
time,
say
or-
this. No, it's not of the times. What it is that this was greenlit. And so these new characters, they're trying to find the character. And so you're going
Yeah.
to see that. Like with Ivanova, she's going to change over time. All of them will. So the first season is real rocky, though. But the first season
Yeah.
of The Next Generation was real rocky, too, for the same reason. Once it hits
Yeah.
the second season forward and these actors are comfortable with their roles, you're going to see a significant change. But the first season is pretty, it's their shakedown cruise. It's pretty
they're
rough.
still trying to find each of the actors are trying to find the voice of the characters.
Right.
And let me, like, just to be upfront about it, Delenn, she does find her voice. It's not terribly different from this episode, but she becomes more smooth.
Oh, yes.
Just more relaxed into the role. But a lot of that also has to deal with the character, the way that the character changes throughout the series too. Dr. Franklin is that character the entire show. He just came in swinging.
Yeah.
So
I will say this. Now, this is my opinion, and Damian, I would like to know what you think. But by the end, hopefully, when we get to the end of the series, I don't know if you all will feel the same. I know that for me, I think that it's criminal that many of these actors would not be nominated for acting awards.
Oh, yeah.
And it's purely because of the prejudice that the academies have against speculative genres. Because I'm going to tell you now, Mira Furlan is who plays Delenn. Just wait. And she can hold her own with Andreas Katsoulis, who portrays Jakar, and Lando Malari.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate that Michael O'Hare doesn't continue into the second season, but we'll probably discuss that as the first season goes on. But all of those core actors, when they find their voice after this first season and this show takes off and all of these breadcrumbs pay off, it's a reason why this show remains popular.
Yeah. A point I would like to make is each of these main characters has its moment in the series.
Yes.
Some of them have a couple, but these characters and these actors are strong enough to carry these scenes by themselves throughout the series, and they do very well. And it is criminal that they were not recognized for that. They all come from several different acting backgrounds. Some of them are theater, some are TV.
Mira Furlan, I believe, is from Yugoslavia. She immigrated from there, and they said that there she is considered, or was considered, because we lost her last year. But I remember reading somewhere where they consider her their Meryl Streep.
Wow.
I wholeheartedly agree with that.
Yeah, she was like TV, like she was huge before she came to the US.
Right.
She moved over here because of a conflict.
Yeah. Yugoslavia doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
But at that time it did. But I realized
at the time it did. Yeah. But there was we can talk a little bit more about the conflicts plural when we get a chance. But you got people who have like I'm sorry, Dr. Franklin. Is it Michael Biggs?
Richard Biggs.
He like I said, he was a daytime soap actor. And Claudia Christian, she was in movies. So you got people with various acting backgrounds, and they mix well together in this series to make this cast, and they just get better and better and better. So season 1, they're really trying to find their rhythm, and this is also common with the Star Trek, and I'll only bring that up because these were out at the same time. Each of the Star Treks, The Next Generation and Deep Space Nine, I have to point this out. I have to get this on audio. They each have moments where key characters have cringy acting moments. And it's funny because people just take it like, oh yeah, it's Star Trek, this happens. But to me, it's usually around the black characters because the writers don't know how to write black characters, and it just comes off as being cringe, and it gets worse. Like those moments don't age well at all, and it's usually them trying to show black characters being excited. I think J. Michael Straczynski completely avoids that problem in this series. And I think he like for black characters that he does take time to kind of elaborate on, he allows those characters to be authentic. So the actor comes through, not the words on his page. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I'm trying to think. Is there, Rod, would you say there's a scene? Are there any cringy scenes? Oh, there is one cringy scene, but it's cringe on purpose. But I don't think it's in the first season.
It's hard for me to recall, but there are cringy scenes, period, in Babylon 5. But to be fair, though, it's not just Star Trek and Babylon 5 and science fiction. This is in any type of televised TV drama. You're going to have off episodes.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But the first season, though, is pretty rocky. Because I remember, I'll be honest, when it first came out and I was watching it, I almost stopped watching it. Because it was really rocky. Not because of at the time there was this big hubbub about, oh, they're ripping off DS9, which isn't true. They came out before DS9 and they are completely different. But I forget what the episode was that really turned it around for me in the first season. And I'm so glad I stayed with it. And then when the second season kicked off, it's like a rocket ship. It just goes.
Oh yeah. Because the foundation is laid,
it's been laid,
and by then it's ready to go. They're ready to just set sail in the direction of this epic space opera.
I remember my being really into it, like the second episode, just because of like the religious and political theme. And I also remember seeing that scene of Delenn having her blood drained when I was 8 years old, thinking, what in the world? Like, is the blood her soul? Like, I was 8.
Yeah.
All I was thinking.
So while this episode dealt with, questions about, I'm not so sure if it was religion per se, but around religion. The next episode 3, Born to Purple. Ooh. We're going to be doing a very 1990s style addressing of, let's say, the news topics at that time. So definitely politics.
I'm gonna say that dress to purple sounds racist.
Yeah. And why I gotta be purple? What are you trying to
say? Right, why?
Now you'll see. Well, thank you all for joining us for this edition of Voices in Hyperspace.